shift our schedule. We thought this was going to be a really popular session, but then when they put the 3 sessions with legislators against this one, I thought, nobody will come. How wrong I was. So this is a very, very important topic, and we have a great set of speakers for you today. I want to just make a little commercial. There are yellow evaluation sheets going through the room. If you don't have one, let me know. I will give you one, and you can either give them to me or bring them to the front desk, or wait. You can put them in that box over there, which I just noticed and didn't know was there. And it's labeled session evaluations. It's really important for us to have feedback. Are we hitting the right topics? Are we addressing them in a way that's helpful to you? Do we have the right kind of people speaking about the issues? So please do fill this evaluation out. I would like to introduce our moderator today. Mary Biggs is the vice chair of the Montgomery County Board of Supervisors, and the reason why she is the perfect moderator for this session is she has been an educator for over 40 years, which is amazing when you look at her because she's very young. I'm going to turn it over to Mary to introduce the speakers and the program.
Thank you, Phyllis. Well, I want to welcome you to the County School Board Relations Community Leaders Common Goals. This session is going to explore the natural tension that exists sometimes between local governing bodies and local school boards. And it's a subject that's near and dear to me because I first ran for the Board of Supervisors in 1995 on this very issue because we didn't have a relationship in Montgomery County between the two boards. And so I'm really excited about that, and we are privileged today to have 3 very well-versed and experienced speakers to address this issue and offer their suggestions on how to make this vital relationship between boards a workable one. So our format today is going to be that each speaker is going to give a presentation, and you may ask questions during the presentation, and we also will try to have time after the presentation for questions. And I'm going to introduce our speakers ahead of time, and then they are just going to go over and give you all their information. Our first speaker is Stewart D. Roberson from Moseley Architects, and he spent the first chapter of his career as an educator. He has over 35 years experience in education, 21 of those years as a public school superintendent. In 2011, he started chapter 2 of his career when he became the chairman, president, and CEO of Moseley Architects. Stewart wanted his second chapter to include opportunities to provide leadership to an entity serving the public interest. Join Moseley Architects with its significant presence in the public sector facility design makes that possible for him. He has been involved in a number of activities and received numerous awards, including Board of Governors of International Baccalaureate, Board of Trustees of Advanced ED, Board of Trustees of the Virginia Foundation for Independent Colleges, Executive Committee of the Greater Richmond Chamber of Commerce, Professor, University of Virginia, Chair, University of Virginia K-12 Advisory Council, Chair, Virginia Commonwealth University Autism Center for Excellence Advisory Council, Chair, Bridging Richmond, a collaborative of business leaders, school superintendents, college presidents, and human service providers, past president of the Urban Superintendents Association of America, past president of the Virginia Association of School Superintendents. He received the Advanced ED National Excellence in Education Award and the Virginia Superintendent of the Year Award. Stewart has a doctoral degree in educational leadership and policy studies as Honorary Doctorate of Human Rights and is Superintendent Emeritus, Hanover County, Virginia Public Schools. Quite a resume, I must say. Now we have Libby Garvey, Supervisor, Arlington County, Virginia. And Libby Garvey was elected to the Arlington County Board of Supervisors in March 2012. And previously, Ms. Garvey was a member of the Arlington School Board and served 5 times as school board chair, so that's a good perspective there coming in. Ms. Garvey is a member of the Council of Governments Emergency Preparedness Council and its Workforce Task Force. She was also appointed by the governor to serve on the P through 16 Education Council. What that means is preschool through college. Ms. Garvey has served in leadership roles in many community organizations, including the County Council of PTAs, the Arlington Civic Association, the Advisory Council on Instruction, the PTAs of Abington Elementary and Drew Model School, and the H.B. Woodlawn Program. More recently, in memory of her husband, she established the Keenan Garvey Memorial Fund for Phoenix Fights and has served on their board. She also serves as a volunteer speaker for the Washington Regional Transplant Community. Ms. Garvey's professional career began as a teacher in the Central African Republic at the Peace Corps. She has also worked as a legislative aide to Congressman Lee Hamilton and as Associate Director of Mount Holyoke Washington Internship Program. Ms. Garvey earned her Bachelor of Arts degree from Mount Holyoke College. Again, you can see the excellence of the people we have here today. Doug Stanley, County Administrator of Warren County. Douglas Stanley is County Administrator for Warren County, Virginia. He has held the post since April 2000. Doug has been with the county since 1994, starting as the county's first full-time zoning administrator. He was appointed planning director in 1996 before being appointed interim county administrator in April 2000. Doug is a member of the International City Management Association, known as ICMA, the Virginia Local Government Management Association, known as VLGMA, American Institute of Certified Planners, AICP, and American Planning Association, APA. He is a past president and board member of the Front Royal Rotary Club and has had a perfect attendance record since 1998. That's an accomplishment in itself. While serving with the county, Doug has been involved in many activities and received a number of awards, including the Special Service Award and Local Government Award by the Friends of the Shenandoah River, the Arts Citizen of the Year by the Blue Ridge Arts Council, the 2013 Rotarian of the Year Award by the Rotary Club of Front Royal, and by the North Warren Volunteer Fire and Rescue Company with a Special Appreciation Award for working on a public-private partnership to construct a district fire and rescue station. In 2013, he received the You Make a Difference Award by the Warren County Board of Supervisors for his outstanding leadership. Doug has a BA in Geography from Mary Washington College, a master's degree in Urban and Regional Planning from Virginia Commonwealth University, and a graduate certificate in Public Administration from Shenandoah University. He is also a graduate of the Senior Executive Institute at the University of Virginia Walden Cooper Center. So again, just highly qualified for this. And let's give them a hand before we start.
Good morning. Good morning. It's an honor to be with you, and especially an honor to be asked to serve with such a wonderful panel. Great friends as well, and I appreciate too, I know as all panelists do, that Phyllis and VACo lined us up. And I also want to acknowledge that in the audience I see folks who will know a great deal of the story that I'm going to tell, or at least touch on. Wayne Hazard from the Hanover County Board of Supervisors, and Rue Harris, I saw come in as the county administrator in Hanover. You know from my introduction that I am a recovering superintendent, and as a result, then you're liberated to reflect on the story or on the relationship. And as it turns out, VACo has created this opportunity for Rue and I in years past to participate as part of your training in providing some of these same perspectives. But my task as the first one up for the panel today is to provide for you two different perspectives, two pretty quick perspectives. First, what is considered to be the legal underpinning behind the relationship that we're talking about today. And then the second perspective is just a set of thoughts about how you may strike the right balance in terms of the essential relationships. So legal relationships and essential relationships are what I'm going to be dealing with. And by the way, I'm not an attorney, but nevertheless, those of us who served in the roles school board members, members of the board of supervisors, or school superintendents certainly recognize that our office and our responsibilities have a basis in law. And then it's important for us to then be reminded from time to time. And you may have had some of this training yourself in your original training with VACo. But I began by focusing on the Constitution of Virginia. I'm going to talk about, very briefly, the Constitution. I'm going to talk about the Code of Virginia. I'm going to talk about the standards of quality, because all three have a direct relationship to the relationships that we're talking about here. And I've highlighted those words, which I think are most significant in each of the sections I'm looking at. The General Assembly is responsible for providing a system of free public elementary and secondary schools and ensure that the education program is of high quality. Then you jump to this section, which appears to be cut off a bit, but what I'm wanting to emphasize here is that the General Assembly shall determine the manner in which funds are to be provided. The funding provisions tend to be the thing that establishes the strongest balance between the relationships of the two entities. And the General Assembly also, according to the Constitution, shall provide for the apportionment of the cost of such program between the Commonwealth and the local units of government comprising such school divisions. And it goes on to say that each unit of local government shall provide its portion of such costs by local taxes or from other available funds. This is in the Constitution. Then we go to this section, which speaks to how school boards shall be selected. And as we know in Virginia, the selection process will vary between elected and appointed. Then we jump to some excerpts from the Virginia Code. And here the code makes it clear that the supervision of schools is vested in the school board. And I know that from time to time, supervisors are very happy that it's vested in the school board, depending upon the issue, but that is according to the state law. And then you move to this code section, which speaks to the powers and duties of superintendents. And as you can see, it's pretty generally stated, but there are legal responsibilities that are codified elsewhere. And then the school board and the state board have a hand in defining the role of the superintendent. And then the Virginia Code speaks to the powers and duties of school boards. And here the list is pretty lengthy as well. I've highlighted that school boards have the responsibility to explain laws and to do it properly and to make sure that they secure information about the conduct of schools such that they can do their jobs effectively, and to care for and manage and control the property of the schools. Again, this is in the code. And then going further into the code, it speaks to providing for the consolidation of the redistricting of boundaries, to operate and maintain the public schools, also determining how long the schools shall meet and what shall be taught in the schools, and to establish and administer a grievance procedure, which is a procedure which is also dictated by the state. A few other school board duties include performing other duties as prescribed by the Board of Education. It's also expected that the school board will obtain public comment in key areas to identify critical shortages of personnel and to ensure that the public schools within the school division are registered with the Department of State Police, particularly as it relates to sex offender matters. So you can see that the state code has some specific expectations among others. More Virginia Code excerpts include that each school board shall manage and control the funds made available to the boards for public schools and may incur costs and expenses. So otherwise, it's explained that the Virginia school boards, by and large, are responsible for the operation of the schools financially. More Virginia Code excerpts speak to the limitation of expenditures, and I know that this is a matter that gets discussed frequently between county administrators and school superintendents as it relates to the fact that no school board shall expend any sum of money in excess of the funds available. And we also see that the budget process itself is grounded in the state code when it is suggested by the code that the superintendent is the one that kicks off the process, because it shall be the duty of the superintendent to prepare the estimate of the amount of money deemed to be needed for the support of the public schools. And of course, we all know that indeed the budget process pivots from there after the superintendent has done his or her duty. And then we get into this section pertaining to the appropriations. The appropriations from the governing body shall not be less than the cost apportioned to the governing body as provided by law. The amount appropriated by the governing body shall relate to its total only or to such major classifications. So in other words, this is where we learned that the governing body, the Board of Supervisors, can choose to appropriate money to the school board in lump sum or by the major classifications, which are defined later. And then we move into the excerpts which come from the Standards of Quality, which is that General Assembly-driven document, which is amended by the General Assembly from time to time, oftentimes by recommendation of the Board of Education, to stipulate what it is that must occur programmatically within the schools. And the Standards of Quality, Standard 1 says that local school boards shall develop and implement a program of instruction aligning to the standards of learning. Standard 2 says that each school board shall assign licensed instructional personnel. Standard 3 speaks to the fact that each local school board shall maintain schools that are fully accredited. So it's assumed that the school boards have a responsibility to work toward full accreditation, even as they are managing the ups and downs of the changes in the standards of accreditation, standards of learning expectations. So that is a real quick primer on the legal grounding, the legal underpinning. And I'm confident that already that spurs some thinking on your part. What I'd like to do now is to, in a fairly expedited way too, to move into a discussion of the essential relationships, because the relationships do pivot off of the legal understandings. And they also obviously have practical implications as it relates to how folks interpret it. And this section comes largely from the Virginia School Board's training manual called Virginia School Boards. And it's one that is used to train new board members. They have a sense, you're going to see here, the sense that they are given in terms of the balance that they're expected to strike. And the governing body is mentioned as we go through this in certain places. So school board members are trained, and of course, it's true that public education is a state function, and that state school authorities rely on the superintendent to exercise their supervision and control. They are also trained that the superintendent is a local officer and that he or she is chief executive, and his or her powers and duties as a state officer are defined and fixed by state law. So you can see, again, this notion that public education is a state function is enforced through the school superintendent and as you'll see, through the school board too. The school board performs the functions of the directors of this corporation, if you will. Certainly as a board of directors, they form policy, they legislate, they also review and evaluate. So they are the policy makers, the superintendent is the chief executive officer. From this interpretation by from this training offered by the Virginia School Board Association. The superintendent performs the functions of the executive, he or she is administrative. Neither the superintendent or the board usurps the duties of the other. Again, this is in terms of striking the balance between the school board and the superintendent. They also teach that it's a cooperative enterprise, that the board and the superintendent don't do it alone. Together with state authorities, and this is key in terms of the governing body relationship, they must work harmoniously to serve pupils and the public while advancing state requirements and local expectations. Yes, they're a state function, but they're performing the state function serving a community which has local expectations, and the community has investment and wants to be proud of what is being achieved. The division and distribution of powers and duties provides for efficient organization and increases the chances for success. It's a balancing act. You'll see now 2 or 3 slides in which I illustrate that indeed that's exactly what it is, a balancing act. Regarding the school budget, which is where we know that balancing act plays out most vividly within a community, the school budget frequently constitutes the largest single portion of the total county budget. No surprise to this group. Preparing the budget is a cooperative effort between the superintendent and the board. Ideally, the preparation involves close communications with the county administrator and the supervisors in the community. So ideally, the school board and the superintendent are processing a budget proposal which has indeed reflected interaction with these key entities. And then we move into the fact that the educational plan or the budget provides an estimate of receipts and expenditures needed to operate the schools. Here are different classifications around which the funding may occur. The budget itself is certainly going to be built around these categories. As I said earlier, the state code permits the supervisors to appropriate the money in one lump sum or by the major categories of the school budget. As it pertains to Board of Supervisors relationship, the Virginia School Board training makes these points. Obviously, that school boards may be appointed or elected in Virginia. I've had the opportunity to work for both an elected school board and for an appointed school board during my career in Falls Church in Hanover. And I can tell you that if you ask me which is better, I would say to you, well, they will always be different. What I tend to say is it doesn't really matter whether you have elected or appointed school board, because on both boards, you're likely to find a board member who wants to adopt a corporate style of behavior. You're likely to find a board member who may want to be micromanaging. And what I've discovered during my experience in working with school boards is that the best board is that board that operates with a mutual sense of trust and cooperation. To the extent that can prevail, then you can get great things done. I say to school board members, if you are appointed, I say to them, if you want to stay appointed, act elected. And then that way you may be appointed for much longer than you may have originally intended. As we know, school boards don't have the power to levy or collect taxes in Virginia. They are dependent upon two elected bodies, the General Assembly and the governing body, and obviously relationships with these two bodies are very, very important as it relates to making things happen for the community. As it relates to succeeding with the governing body, and again, the Virginia School Board will say this, Virginia School Board Association will say this in their training, they say that in order to succeed with the governing body, the school board itself must be fully sold on the program. In this instance, particularly the program which is being described through the budget proposal that is being brought forth. They also say that school board members should be familiar with the program and the data supporting the budget. They should maintain the best possible relations with the appropriating body. I can share with you that Mr. Hazard and Mr. Harris are keeping the team strong, and they are also having the opportunity to interact with their counterparts on the school board side. What we discovered over time is that this teamwork creates within a community the opportunity to make things happen together. If you know, for instance, what would the supervisor like to see? Would the supervisor like to see a new trade school, or would the supervisor like to see JROTC, or would the supervisor like to see IB brought into the schools? We can point to those specific ideas in Hanover as having occurred because there were supervisors willing to champion that. And that doesn't just happen because someone wants it to happen. It happens because everybody is on board with the notion that we like working with one another, and because of these relationships, we're going to make some things happen together. So it's expected, too, that the school board will approach the appropriating body in a spirit of fairness and reasonableness. And it's also understood that school boards will recognize that they must consider the needs of the school in connection with the needs of all the other public business of the county. We recognize that sometimes the needs aren't framed that way, and that's where school boards may find that they have a liability on their hands because they have not been able to frame it such. But indeed, that's the kind of training that they receive to try to frame it that way so that everyone understands that they're part of the same team. In order to succeed, they must both understand that relationships are not confined to the formal presentation of the budget. I think it makes a lot of sense for school board members and superintendents to find out what the likes and dislikes and the hobbies and the interests are of members of the county administration and board of supervisors. Does a particular member of the board of supervisors like to golf? Well, is there a counterpart in the school board that likes to golf? There's nothing like large blocks of time outside to form a relationship. And it should not have to be just around the budget process. Recognize that the school's success is a joint responsibility. How can you be proud in what you're doing within your county to support the schools, to make them your crown jewel, and to assure that what does occur in the schools is going to increase the quality of life for everyone that's there, that we're all representing. And finally, model the behavior that respect and trust is a two-way street. That's part of the school board members' training. I would suggest to you that in order to strike the balance most effectively, someone on both sides of the house, if you will, has to be the point person to make sure those relationships are struck most effectively. Typically, it's the superintendent and the county administrator who are the point persons, and you expect them to get along, and you don't expect to see that there's going to be tension between them. But then in some localities, that's not always the way those relationships are managed. Typically, in some localities, it's managed between the two chairs of the board. Someone needs to be the point persons between the two entities to make sure that the relationships are struck most effectively. That is my presentation, and I appreciate your attention. Thank you for staying awake particularly. And I'm now going to turn it over to Libby Garvey. Thank you.
Well, good morning, and it is good to see everybody here early in the morning. And I think Stu and I actually go way back. We were part of a group of superintendents and school board members from around the state that came together to work actually to advocate for better funding, better state funding of education. And that group went on for about a year and a half, I think. And we had Bedford schools, which had like the lowest teacher salary in the state. Arlington County, we had the highest teacher salary in the state. And we only worked on absolute consensus. The group had to agree on every proposal that we brought forward, no disagreement. And we got some really good stuff done. So that's kind of where I got started, where I met Stu, and it's a really great way to work if you can work that way. And I think what Stu's done is presented sort of the structure of how it's supposed to work. And then I and Garvey are going to talk a little bit more about how it actually does work. And I think I'm going to try and keep it at a certain level and not get too much into the weeds. And it's a fairly positive presentation, but there's always a lot going on under this radar scope, if you will. Mary talked about how sometimes there's attention. Is there any time there's not attention? I mean, it's all about power and money, right? And so I think there's always attention going on, and the deal is, can you come to a consensus on what your goals are? And when you can do that, as with the group that Stu and I were involved in, you can get great things. But it's hard. So I'm talking about revenue sharing, because that's something that we have in Arlington. I must say, Arlington County is kind of an outlier. I mean, we're very small. We're 26 square miles. We're pretty big. We have a population of about 215,000 people. We're relatively quite wealthy. Our median income is $106,000. Per capita income is $86,000. We're a very well-educated community. Bachelor's degree, 71% of the people in our community have a bachelor's degree. 37% have a graduate degree. On the board of supervisors, I'm relatively undereducated for the people that I serve. So it's a community that really values education. We also don't have all that many children. Only about 15% of the folks in the county have children in schools, which I think is also different. So I want to kind of go over those outliers, but the basics are the same about coming together and trying to work out this tension and make things work better for everybody. And I think one more thing in the context before I go to the next slide and kind of get into the weeds a little bit. Arlington Public Schools is very high performing. I'm actually very proud of my 15 years on the school board. We're ranked, all of our 4 high schools in the top 2% nationwide, if you go by this Newsweek survey that they do every year. The schools just won a Medallion of Excellence Award. It's the Malcolm Baldrige Award. It's the 9th school system to get that since the 80s. 92% of our students graduate on time. 98% from our comprehensive high schools graduate on time, 98%. And then lest you think it's because we're all rich and privileged, which many people are, about a quarter of our students do not speak English at home. We have 111 different nations represented. At times, our kids speak more different languages than are in the UN. And about a third of our kids, a little bit over a third, live in poverty in our community slash. So a bit like the country, I think the country, the child population represents poverty more than usually the adult population. We have a lot of kids living in poverty. And so I don't, so I just kind of want to set that context of what we're dealing with. So we have very high expectations, and we do have some very definite challenges in the school system. So we have something called revenue sharing, which began in 2002. I was on the board at the time, and I've been on the board for a while. One of our board members, Mary Hines, who some of you may know, we would get to the start of the budget process, and she would say, I think they're going to give us, and she'd come up with a number. And about 6 months would go by, incredible amounts of staff time, incredible amounts of meetings and discussions and disputes, and as school folks, the PTAs would come and they would, lobby, and you'd have 100 speakers and yada yada, all to get money for the schools. And we would end up arguing about $100,000 a show. And we would always end up pretty much where Mary said 6 months before that we would be. So our staff did study, and what they found was pretty consistently, the schools got the same percentage of the county budget. Every year we take 6 months of staff time and citizen time and board time arguing about it, always to come up for pretty much the same place. So we came up with an idea, hey, why don't we start there and kind of like cut out the 6 months of arguing back and forth and all of the time and effort. So that was the generation of the revenue sharing agreement, and it started out with a percentage. It was a nice high percentage, as you can see here, 51% county, 48%, 0.6% schools. And then as the third goal, it says, over time it got adjusted. Now, in the revenue sharing agreement, we were supposed to talk about it. And I can still remember leaving a fairly angry voicemail with my county board colleagues at the time. It's kind of funny being on both, having been on both sides of this. Because they made a change, and they hadn't talked to us about it at all on the school board side. The revenue sharing agreement said at least we're supposed to talk about it. And that's part of the communication. I think it's very important. I think it's unfortunate we can do that. But the county board's got the power, and they set the number. So it worked out, but the feelings weren't as good as I think they could have been. And so over time, the agreement kept getting modified to exclude certain things. So what happened was the percentage is high, but there's this pie. And so what the county board kept doing is trying to slices out of the pie, and the pie kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So you can still say schools are getting almost half the 50%, almost 50% of the budget, and yet the pie was getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So it's not really, if you put the whole budget together, the percentage is actually going down for schools. All right, this is supposed to go back. There we go. So, a number of adjustments were being made, and actually what happened was eventually so that now we will say that the schools are getting about 49.1%, but it's actually more like 36%. So there are all kinds of things that got taken out, and they may make sense. I'm not saying that it was wrong, but to some extent we got a little less transparent about how we did things. So, when I went to our staff and asked to have slides and have this presentation, I need to give this presentation and these slides. This is what our county staff gave to us, which is great. But this is a favorite slide they like to show. So whenever schools are a little upset about what percentage they're getting, they will show this slide. And look at that increase. It's huge, right? But the thing is, at the beginning, way back in 2003, schools were getting 246 point. Well, basically, you can't read the numbers. Schools were getting just about the same as the county as they started out. And I asked for a different graph that showed the difference. So at the end, while schools have gotten a lot more, the county has gotten even more revenue. So this is one of the sort of political games we play. I get it, because we're talking to our public. Look how much we're giving to schools. Look at this incredible increase. But if you looked at it as an increase compared to what the county's been making, it actually has been going down, 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 down. What is that about? Well, never mind. I think I might say something I should say. Cost per student. So, again, we're pretty wealthy, and I just wanted to sort of set the context here. And of course, the cost per student, that's an average. You know how on the average, if you got a 1 foot in a bucket of ice water, they say, and 1 foot in a bucket of boiling water, on average, you're comfortable. So averages are kind of very tricky things. So students that don't speak English, that come to us not speaking English, students that have disabilities, those students will cost a whole lot more than students who come to us with, 2 PhD parents, and, lots of preschool and help. So that can really make a difference, and so the average cost for students is kind of a tricky one. And that just shows the area. We have basically, and all that really says is it's looking at the school systems in the region. And the school systems in the region, we've kind of stayed at about the same place compared to school systems in the region. And we are one of the most expensive. So what's the major cost for schools? What is the major cost driver for schools? A wild guess.
Personnel?
Yeah, personnel. Absolutely. Something like, 85% is personnel. So to live in Arlington County costs a whole lot of money, or to live in Northern Virginia. So we pay our teachers quite well. And they're always things, because actually we used to think about teachers who live, say, in Loudoun County, and they're driving to Arlington past Loudoun County schools, Fairfax County schools, to get to an Arlington County school. What's going to make them drive all that way to come and teach in Arlington? So we have certain pressures of needing to keep that up. I think that's it. It is. So happy to entertain questions later. The whole point is, if you can have common goals and talk about things, it works a whole lot better. You can do that over like that.
Good morning. I think my job is, in back cleanup, is to show you a good test case, an example of where we really have kind of turned the corner. We went from kind of a caustic relationship, say about 14, 15 years ago, to one that is very amicable, very good working relationship, and I think built on shared vision and common goals to achieve the desired outcome. Warren County, located in northwestern Virginia, up in the northern part of the Shenandoah Valley. We're a community of about 38,000 people. We have about 219 square miles of land, which puts us about 5th smallest in the state of Virginia. Kind of to compound that, about 15 to 20% of our land is in state and federal parkland. So we don't have a whole lot for economic development. It makes things tough as far as generating money. But we're also top 1/3 in population density out of 95 counties in Virginia. Some of our folks probably commute to Arlington to teach. We locate off I-66. We're a bedroom community as well. In order to have an effective relationship between board and school board, you have to start with elected leaders who want to work together, work well together. And starting off, I want to recognize 3 of my board members, Chairman Dan Murray. Dan, if you would stand. Board member Richard Trasick, and board member Tony Carter. Thank you guys for being here today to support me. The mission of Warren County Public Schools is to provide a quality educational opportunity for all our students to achieve their highest academic learning potential, to develop positive core values reflective of our community, and be prepared for higher education and the workforce. Several years ago, our school division adopted the theme that Trek to Excellence takes everyone. In their trek, the school system wants to make a positive difference in the lives of the children of Warren County and to become a school system that is respected, recognized, and honored as one of the best anywhere. And I can tell you 15, 20 years ago, we were at the other end of that spectrum. As I progressed through the presentation this morning, you'll see some of the commitment of our entire community to make our school system the best. The school board and the board of supervisors have worked together to form a relationship which positively impacts our students. In the words of Helen Keller, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. As you heard my bio, my background is in urban and regional planning. I came to Warren County about 20 years ago to work in the planning department. I think one of the assets that I bring to the table as a county administrator and as a partner with the school system is vision, long-term vision in everything that we do. I've also been very fortunate, two of my board members now used to work with me when they were on the planning commission. So they understand the concept of comprehensive planning and capital improvement planning and the need to do those things up front and carry through with the program. The visioning involves ensuring that the future needs of the school system are being planned for. That has been extended, again, into language in our comp plan and CIP. As the slide shows, our community's vision is that we must maintain and enhance the quality of life for the residents of the county, which includes quality educational facilities and a quality educational system. Our goal is the development of new school facilities and renovation of existing facilities for the school system, which would be consistent with our comp plan. Some of those objectives to achieve this goal is maintaining a 20-year CIP, to review the performance and effectiveness of existing facilities and proceed with changes and/or expansion as necessary. To meet community educational service and facility needs is a top priority. To ensure that additional school facilities and services costs resulting from new development are equitably borne by those benefiting. To coordinate and locate school facility expansion with future development, ensuring school accessibility to county residents, and to coordinate athletic facilities with the county's Parks and Rec program where possible. Yes, this is the proverbial sandbox. In the picture, you'll see a picture of the superintendent and I as kids. You'll notice I'm the one doing all the work and she's watching. In order to be successful in this business, boards of supervisors and school boards and their staffs must find a way to work together to achieve common goals. To do so sometimes takes compromise, but ultimately it takes trust. Trust that both sides understand the needs and constraints of the other. Unlike a marriage, you can't simply get divorced if things are not working out. And kind of like a marriage, but most issues revolve around money. We all walk the talk that the county and school board are in a partnership that includes give and take. Warren County, like many communities, has had its ups and downs. Our board and school board have developed a mutual respect for the jobs that each one does. School board does not make demands of the board, it expresses its needs. In return, the board of supervisors does not try to do the school board's job. There's no game playing. Both board and administration speak the truth to one another. The school administration office is located as part of our government center. That wasn't the case 15 years ago. The co-location is helped to foster a positive working relationship. If I hear something, I get a call from the supervisor, I have a question, I get up and walk down the hall, face-to-face discussion. We both have an open door policy, so it's easy for us to see each other. I remember a previous superintendent, I had just become county administrator, and I called and said, I want to come over and sit down. So I came over, I sat for 30 minutes in the chair outside the office. She was in there, on a telephone call or something, but the relationship is much different today. And the superintendent and I know it all starts with that relationship. She knows and trusts that I fully support the system and the staff and the track to excellence. And I know they will ask her again what they need to run the system. And we'll use their resources wisely to provide a quality education for our children. That does not mean you get everything you ask for during the budget process. That means that, again, there's compromise. And the school board knows that the board of supervisors has other priorities other than the school system that we have to take into account. When I first came to work for the county, I remember going to the annual budget work session between the board and the school board. I sat for over 3 hours and listened as board members went over each budget line for each school in the central office with board members, questioning the need for funding and whether it was relevant to the education of the county's children. Fast forward to today, we no longer approve the budget by major category. Our budget work session with the school board consists of talking about goals for the upcoming year, talking about capital improvements, the budget, pupil estimates, but there's no longer a need to question line by line the proposed expenditures. There's a level of trust between the board members that pervades the relationship. I think the irony is that over the time I've been with the county, we transitioned from the appointed school board to the elected school board. I think one would have thought there would have been more trust for the school board when it was appointed by the board, but we I think found out that really hasn't been the case because those school board members are now accountable to the the public through the election process. Reminds me of a quote by Ernest Hemingway: "The best way to find out if you can trust somebody is to trust them." We have been able to avoid the situations where boards and staffs get entrenched in a position and refuse to budge. A recent example was a compromise on a modified auditorium for proposed middle school. Rather than a full auditorium they initially requested, we moved forward with a cheaper hybrid option that provides the full stage and base seating with overflow into the cafeteria. Again, give and take. Take a trip in the Wayback Machine. Everybody remember the Rocky and Bullwinkle show? The Wayback Machine, go back to the early 2000s. You'll find a county and a school system with aging facilities. At that time, our high school was over 60 years old. Our middle school was over 50 years old. We had a looming overcrowding problem, many capital improvement needs. The school board and board were struggling to figure out a priority list and, more importantly, how to pay for it. The bottom line, new building renovation of existing facilities was absolutely necessary, and we had to find a way to work to make it happen. By working together, we developed consensus on a 20-year facilities plan. My job, working with VACo, our financial consultant, was to figure out a plan to fund the needed improvements and help the board sell it to the community. One of the key components was that the county started putting funding aside ahead of 5-6 years ahead of time to start to grow into the anticipated debt service. As a result, today we have 2 beautiful, new, modern, impressive, up-to-date high schools and a new middle school. And we're currently in the design process for that second middle school that will be completed and ready to open by the fall of 2017. The result, when will be completed, will be 4 secondary schools that include state-of-the-art auditoriums, libraries, computer labs, wireless access, smart boards, security cameras, engineering labs, and athletic facilities. Top-of-the-line facilities that will show the children in our community that we care about them and we've invested in their futures with the latest in technology to prepare them for the 21st century. Just a few slides to show a couple of our facilities. Skyline High School, a new 223,000 square foot high school. It's got an 1,100 student capacity with the core expandable to 1,500. That was a $48 million project. It's an aerial view. The facility is located just off the northern entrance to the Skyline Drive, hence the name Skyline High School. Also, Warren County High School, we renovated a junior high for the high school. Involved 180,000 square foot of new construction, 94,000 square foot of renovation. That was a total price tag of $38.8 million. There's an aerial view. Both schools very equivalent as far as spaces and facilities. The total project cost in 2007 was $82.8 million. At the time, it was one of, I think, the largest PPEA project that was completed in the state of Virginia. Again, we worked with Davenport and Sands Anderson as we worked through that process to complete those projects. Our second middle school, which will complete our priority list here for our capital improvement plan, we've identified a site, 25 to 30 acres. It'll be an 800-student school. Originally, included in that 2005 capital improvement plan, was part of our shift from 1 high school, 1 junior high to 1 middle to 2 high schools and 2 middles. This will allow the grade structure to be able to achieve an ideal grade structure of K-5 elementary, 6-8 middle school, and 9 through 12 for high school. It will also allow us to pull the 8th grades out of the 2 high schools, creating additional capacities in both of those facilities. And we feel it will last us for the next 15 to 20 years into the future. The site, again, has been selected and approved by the school board and the board. Majority of the land has already been purchased as part of a road construction project. The school board is working to finish up plans as we speak. We're hoping to have the project out to bid in early 15 and have the school open for the 17-18 year. We actually, I think we're going to sell bonds on November 18th, so we're getting very close to getting this project moving forward. That's a rendering of a new school. It's going to be constructed. Slide just shows there's the bus entrance and the interior atrium. Beautiful new facility being completed. In addition to facilities, we're a growing community, and we see the need to grow government to meet the needs of our citizens. I think our board are firm believers in the fact that that doesn't necessarily mean that we need to add bodies to do that. I know since Pam and I both came on in 2000 as county administrator and superintendent, we've always tried to find ways to work together, to use combined resources to meet the needs of the school system and county government in general. And we've been lucky to have two boards who have kind of bought in and encouraged that concept of collaboration. We do joint capital improvement planning, combined building committee. We do joint vehicle maintenance, joint HVAC maintenance, that just occurred this year. Joint technology services, they handle all our IT needs. We have shared custodial services in our government center. Shared maintenance responsibilities for athletic and recreation fields, some of my parks and rec guys, lining the fields for the football stadiums, and joint utilization of some other shared facilities we use for meeting space. So we've been, again, extremely successful outside just the kind of budget and capital improvements realm of things. Also want to touch on the fact that sometimes it takes private support or public efforts to incubate an idea or new approach that helps students compete in the global marketplace, instills a passion for lifelong learning, and sparks a vision for success. In the mid-1990s, Warren County Education Endowment was created by a number of community leaders to provide private support for our system. One of my other hats is I'm also the president of the endowment, and we fund projects that are sponsored by our school system that are consistent with its mission, initiate sustained improvement in the capability of the students, and enhance the attractiveness of the community through the promotion of educational excellence. And since 2004, we've given out over $295,000 in grants to teachers to improve access to technology and other improvements in the classroom. As some of those newspaper slides show, we've been very effective in building that relationship. And part of that has been not just our relationship between the board and the school board, but reaching out to the community and building relationships with local businesses to provide support for our school system. Support beyond the real estate taxes that they pay. These businesses also wrote letters of support for the creation of a Project Lead the Way. We have an engineering program and a medical sciences program. We actually have graduated 2 classes of the engineering kids and are putting kids into college in the engineering track. And hopefully in the next couple of years we'll be sending kids off to medical school. Today's modern environment needs to be a connection between local business, community, and public education. And one of the other ways we've been successful in doing this, I think our board should be recognized as kind of a leader, that we put one of our assistant superintendents on our economic development authority. So he's there every month, every meeting, responding directly to questions and criticism of the school system, and is able to bring back kind of the concerns of business back to the system. In closing, a quote from our superintendent, the success of these programs would not have been possible without cultivating relationships and partnerships with our board of supervisors and the community. So thank you very much for your time, and look forward to answering any questions.
Well, I think the speakers have covered the whole process. We have the legal framework from Stewart, we have the communication part from Libby, and then we have the action piece from Doug. And I would like to say that Montgomery County identifies very closely with what's going on in Warren County as far as where we came from, and it didn't all happen overnight. They were baby steps to get there. But now entertain questions for any of our panelists. Oh my goodness, how should we do it, Phil? Let's start right here and work our way over.
Sure.
And do they need a mic, or can they just stand up?
Gladys Banks, Mike Buchanan. Question to Doug. Why are you not borrow all the money and go forth to build the school? But you said you put down a certain amount. How much did you put down percentage of the estimated cost of the school?
We had an idea of how much the debt service was going to be several years down the road. So what we did with the board was we had some new industry and stuff that went on the line. As they started paying taxes, we earmarked that money and started putting it aside in the budget under capital outlay, but basically building that amount over a few years. So within 5 years, we had about $1.5 million dedicated in the budget for debt service before we got to that point. If we had waited until we built those 2 schools, we'd have to raise taxes probably 20 cents to do it. At the end of the day, I think we were around 7 cents tax increase to cover the amount of debt. So again, by planning for it, building into it, we didn't wind up with sticker shock at the end of the day.
Thank you.
Yes, Libby?
I'll stand up, I guess, if you. So we were sort of there when I first came on the school board, and there was a big jump, and it was sticker shock for the public. We're trying to get now, so there's basically a set amount of debt service that we know we're always going to be paying, and it's built into the budget. So when projects get paid off, there's a new one that comes on, and it's just a cycle that keeps going. So if we can get that point, and I'm not saying we're quite there yet, but we're a lot closer, that can really help. Maybe in smaller divisions, you don't have as much building going on, but we know we're always going to be having maintenance, major maintenance and other things. So you try to get just a set amount that we just kind of plan on every year.
Okay, Andy McCready from Pulaski County. I would like to ask all three speakers to answer this, including our recovering superintendent. In your experience, did you receive your funding from your locality via lump sum or categorical? And what was your impression, good or bad, of what that had or helped you? Please, all three.
I have received it both ways, but I can tell you in Hanover, when we moved from categorical appropriation to a lump sum appropriation in the time that I was there, the feeling that came from that was one of implicit and explicit trust. So I had the joy then of moving from the more legally accepted or legally appropriate or legally permitted category level appropriation to one which supervisors were saying to the school, board, we trust you to take it as a lump sum and do what you think is most appropriate.
If I just stand here, can you all hear me in the back? Yeah, I'm hearing sing head nod. So I've basically done it, it's always been lump sum. I think actually now that you say it, when we vote, we've got these categories, but we don't ever talk about that in my experience, and that goes back 17 years now. As we're approaching, we're re-looking at our revenue sharing agreement, and I've been thinking about it. As a percentage, then the school board's got to make do with what they get. You kind of agree on that, and then they have to do it. If we do categorical, which I'm a little worried about we may get to. We may get to like need and getting back a little bit more to where we were, like an amount of money, and then you got to justify it. Then you end up fighting with each other about what's that for, what's that for, what's that for. And to some extent that takes you out of your role. I mean, really that's the school board's job, not the county board's job, the board of supervisors' job. So in thinking about it, I think lump sum is better. There's a trust issue, but it also just keeps people out of other people's business. I got plenty of things to worry about on the county board, and I really don't want to spend a whole lot of time worrying with the schools about what their, what this category is and that and that and that. But it can devolve down into that. And then you get the Washington Monument sort of thing. We're not going to do this if you don't give us the money. And then that starts to play out in the whole political arena and uses out a whole time. To be very effective, you pick a favorite program and you say, oh, we just can't do that if the county board doesn't give us this money. And then you've got all kinds of people coming to talk to you.
We've moved from a categorical to lump sum funding. I think one of the biggest changes we've made in the last 12 years is that there used to be this feeling that the schools would spend down their budget at the end of the year and basically burn through the money and nothing would be returned. We started giving it back to them for one-time capital improvements, things like school buses, textbook fund, and working with them. All of a sudden, they did have larger fund balances at the end of the year, but they were encouraging their folks to spend wisely and save the money because then they could address some of the bigger school needs. So I think that coupled with the lump sum has really improved that level of trust.
Keel Goodwin, Orange County Chairman. Mine is not a question, but an example of what we've accomplished lately. Before I got on the board, the first meeting I remember going to, watching the superintendent ask for $300,000 of saved money to do a special educational program, which sounded good. Up till the point he told the chairman if he couldn't have the money, he'd go buy paper. You know the rest of the story. After the chairman ate him for lunch, the school board also ate him for lunch. But what we did a few years ago, I got talked into doing a retreat by my county administrator. And we did the retreat, and Tyler Sinclair is the one that did it. I'll tag her on because she was great. And we found what our priorities were. And once we knew what we wanted to do, which is what I'm seeing up here, then we decided the school board should come on and do one too. And of course, when we first invited them, they were all like, what is it that you actually want? And once they got over the terror of finding out what it is that we try to accomplish, we all came to that same game page where we were all moving the train forward. We now have a liaison from the board, which is myself, to the school board, one from the school board to us. I actually live 4 doors from the chairman of the school board, so it makes communication easier. But those are the things that we did that, you know, it brought everybody on the same page. And no, you don't get everything because we always know schools want more money than we can give them. And you can justify the needs, you just can't justify the tax. But once we pulled all that together, it's made life so much easier. And yes, we do lump sum categorical, it's a nightmare. But, you know, just getting everybody on the same page, talking, and then everything works so much better. And it gets rid of the confrontational problem. Thank you.
Excellent presentations you have provided. Doug, this is a question for you. I'm from Pulaski County, Judge Shepard, the chairman. In Pulaski County, in the last 20 years, we have built 2 new, brand new elementary schools. We did some renovation. But now the concern is dealing with our 2 middle schools, who had been 2 high schools. The question that's come up to us is basically, they were wanting to build one particular middle school and renovate the elementary school. But the question that's come up is that the 2 middle schools, what can be done with those? So my question is, you do the renovations, the old schools that are not used for school purposes, you know, they're provided back to the board. What are y'all doing with those?
And we went, again, we had a high, a junior high, and a middle. The high school eventually has become our middle school. That's our one middle school right now. The junior high was converted up to a high school. We did a 100,000 square foot addition. The middle school, which was 50-some years old, built in the mid-50s, really, at the end of the day, it wasn't worth saving as a school. With our partners at Moseley Architects, we are converting that to a Health and Human Services building. Actually, today, the project goes out to bid. So our health department, our social services department, we used it. The Parks and Rec, we didn't have an indoor gym. Boom, that gym is now housing our youth basketball and volleyball programs. The field, the old football field at that school is being used by our travel football team. So we've repurposed that facility, carved it up. The school system kept a piece of it. They're going to use it for school maintenance. So again, I think you got to think outside the box. There are uses out there. First thing is get an architect in there. Is there any useful value to building the school property? If not, find a different use for it for the community.
Doug, one part of Mecklenburg. How much is your new 800 student middle school going to cost?
Our current estimate right now is about 45 million.
I learned about 10 years ago,
Frederick
you ain't
County
really got
is
to do
awarded the bid for about 50, so I know they've got one just texted.
Barbara Bird, Clark County. I was a high school teacher for 9 years, and I'm going into my 16th year on the Board of Supervisors. And I've just found, working with the school board, you have to have a giving, understanding Board of Supervisors, but they have to put the foot down because they're responsible to their constituents. But more importantly, I think the school board has a responsibility to elect a superintendent that can work with the school board, with the Board of Supervisors, because the superintendent of schools sets the whole tone for the board, for the school board. And if you don't have someone that's willing to work and compromise and talk, and not just talk at meetings, but talk over the phone or meeting or whatever, then you've really got big hill to climb.
We're going to do a couple more questions. We still have 5 minutes.
I don't have a question. I'd just like to make a comment. When Mr. Roberson was recovering from being a superintendent, I was learning to be a supervisor. And it was also during a downtime in the economy. So actually, that's a good time to take office because people start looking inside to make sure that we are spending money appropriately. But one of the things that we did, and I think our school representative will tell you the same thing, we have a great relationship with our schools, but we have formed a joint education committee that we meet 2 members of the board, 2 members of the school board, and anybody else that wants to show up, superintendents, everything, at least every quarter. And we talk about the financial side, but we also talk about the needs, what's going forward, so there's no surprises, and we all are keeping abreast of what's going on. We found that we could join some services that saved money and saved overhead and weren't as redundant. So I think that is an avenue that schools and counties could work together on to better communicate. Thank you.
I think there are a couple up here.
Thank you very much. Janet Clark, Loudoun County Board of Supervisors. With approximately 80,000 students in our school system, certainly the personnel costs are just growing, opening 1 to 2 new schools each year. My question to you folks in the theme of combined resources has to do with benefits. I'm just curious as to whether your county staff, your experience with your county staff and your school system staff, if they're both on different benefits programs.
I think you'll find it will vary from county to county, but speak to Hanover County's experience again. The expectation between the county administrator and the superintendent when discussing things budget, and particularly when it gets to compensation discussions and benefits in particular, it's understood health insurance. We're in open enrollment right now. That the same health plan is going to be made available to both sides. There may be some variations between what the county and schools do based on the marketplace. Schools do compete in a different market than the county government does in some instances. I think on the big ticket items, particularly with health insurance, short-term disability, long-term disability, the whole array of your traditional benefit plans. In Hanover, there's the expectation that everybody's going to be subscribing to the plan. And then you can take that into a discussion of salaries as well. And that's going to vary consistent with system from locality to locality. But I know that in Hanover, the expectation is that we're going to be very close to one another in terms of the percentage that we announce as the salary increase across the board this year for all employees, whatever that percentage may be.
So you're saying you apply the same percentage for the school system personnel as you do for the county personnel for the salary increases?
That's been the expectation for some years.
Okay.
We used to apply, or maybe we do it differently, and we used to apply the same percentage, and lately we have not. So right now, the 2 benefits, they're really pretty different. One does DRS, schools and DRS, county does not.
Our health insurance packages are different, and one time we looked at merged them, but the experience on the school board side is much different, and it would have hurt the county side. One of the things we've noticed, again, school boards are in charge of how much the employee and school board contributions are. We found that the school system wasn't increasing their share in proportion to what the county had done for its employees. So last year we had to move a significant amount of money over to try to help them address that issue. The salary compensation issue, we've actually, over the last 10 years, we're almost identical. We do try to talk and do the same thing. It gets a little tricky when the General Assembly dropped and give a 3 or 4% increase in the past for school board employees, and then that forces the locality to buck up and take care of it. But I think they all think of themselves as county employees. You've got to try to work together to try to make it equitable. Otherwise,
Garvey, I'm Sheriff of Montgomery County. My question, well, actually two questions. How did you, or how did you involve the citizens in, as being a part of the assessment of your capital improvement plan? And also, how did you determine what you truly needed in a capital improvement program as far as the technology that was going to be required for education? Because my board, we're not, we don't run a school system. So who did you depend on to tell you what was really needed, through that renovation or new building?
Unlike many years past where they have a site-based committee of citizens, I think when we get their capital improvement plan 10 years ago, it was much more of board of supervisors and school board in the room, trying to boil it down to people who are going to make the decision. We did have public hearings and public feedback, kind of open house meetings about different options and plans, so there was public input gleaned through the process. I think as far as the technology piece, one, we have a very sharp, astute IT director, but it's also about partnering with the right firms that can bring the experience to the table. Go out and look at other school systems, look at what they have in their facilities. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, but get out. We actually did some site visits and tours and looked at what we wanted to include or not include. But again, part of it is it's hard looking 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the road, what technology pieces. Again, our private educational endowment bought the first smart board for our school system. The school system liked it so much, they agreed that when they built new facilities, they wanted to include it. So there was really the private sector, DuPont, Cisco Foods, Interbank Foods, companies that had donated to our endowment that helped put those first technology pieces in the classroom and help sell it to not only teachers, but to the school board and staff administration.
Arlington does community involvement like we overdo it sometimes. So the school system's got their own citizens advisory committee on the capital improvement. The county's got its own group. And then when we do a particular building, we've got a citizens group on the school side and a citizens group on the county side. And so there's a lot of citizen involvement. It does help keeping people kind of tuned. I think whatever you do, I know in the schools, we're trying to be as flexible as possible. This is going to change the face of education. So if you think about it, education today is still in the 19th century, right, basically? We're doing factory models. We date stamp the kids. Class of 14, class of 15, class of 16. They all sit the same amount of time, right? We got seat time. We check off the block what they're supposed to do. We're treating them in some ways like widgets. I think good education systems try not to do that. This is going to enable us to do a lot more, I think, with education, meeting individual kids' needs, making it interesting for kids. So what you want to do above all is be flexible and figure out whatever you think is going to happen won't in the next 10 to 15 years. But I think, one of the messages I just like to sort of conclude with, I think we're getting towards the end, is the face of education is going to change. We are going to move out of that 19th century factory model agrarian calendar. I mean, I know we have a lot of rural places in Virginia, but in Arlington, the kids are still going to school and at home in the summer so they can help work in the fields, which makes no sense anymore. So education is going to be changing probably beyond something that we even know, and I think that is even more of an important reason for us on county boards to stay close to the school board and to our citizens and help work it through, because I think it's going to be really bumpy as we try to make that transition from the 19th to the 21st century, and I think we're going to have to do it. So.
We have one more question, and then we'll wrap it up. Unfortunately, it's been so good. But go ahead.
Hi, my name is Meg Bonke. I'm with Stafford County. I used to be on the school board, and now I'm on a supervisor. And we've made great strides in our county due to our joint arrangement where we have 3 school board members and 3 supervisors. And like somebody else said, we get together once a quarter, and everybody can add things to the agenda. And it's a very productive meeting. But my question is actually about OPEB. When I was on the school board side, we had a tremendous amount of discussion, arguments about the OPEB responsibility. And I'm just wondering if your 3 counties are in concert with what the school board is doing.
Mr. Roberson, he's a doctor.
The definition of OPEB.
Other folks, employment benefits.
Other employment benefits.
It's this accounting rule that we've got to meet, and I didn't catch the end of you because I was talking to Stu here. basically the school, in Arlington, the schools and the county have had separate responsibilities to do that, and we both are really on track. You probably saw, if you remember, on my presentation at one point, one of the reasons that we took a slice out of the pie was that the county board wanted to use that to meet their OPEB obligations and help do that. And I will tell you, on the school board side, we weren't too pleased on that because they were taking it out of the pie and we'd already been doing it. So that there was a little rank there. But anyway, I think we're both on board and we're both doing it separately responsible. If that's the question. You're not doing that, okay.
Certainly, the big piece is the state piece, and whether it falls on the state's books or our books. And I think we've been obviously trying to work to get the state to take on their part of the responsibility. But I'd say Warren County, no, we haven't done a whole lot together to look at that issue. I think everybody will end up looking to the Board of Supervisors to fix the problem at the end of the day. So the state needs to step up and accept responsibility for their portion of the compensation.
And that's an issue that VACo's been working on with the state, because we absolutely think that needs to happen.
And unless Rue Harris is still in the room, I don't have a good answer for him. But Warren and Arlington sound real reasonable to me.
All right, well, first of all, we want to thank each and every one of you for attending, but we especially want to thank our three presenters. They worked hard to put this together over the last few weeks, and I think they did an excellent job, and that would be Stewart, Libby, and Ed. Let's give them a hand.